Welcome back to the Georgia Show. I'm glad to be here with my cohort, Bill Quinn. We've got a heck of a show for you tonight, a lot of information to go through, a couple of housekeeping events. I am in Montenegro, which is part of the Balkans. We're meeting sources here. We just were in Beirut working with the Christian communities there and reporting on what's happening to them and trying to raise the profile of those communities around the world, actually. So that's going to continue. And Montenegro is an Orthodox Christian country, as well as Serbia, which is our next stop. But we're building sources and building relationships and to continue the kind of reporting that we bring to you from all over the world. We have another good announcement that we are in the process. We are one of the firms that's been selected to have a Pentagon press pass. So we will be visiting the Pentagon and reporting and getting access to a lot of the figures that you see in the national news, and we'll be in the Pentagon press briefings. So we hope to see that consummate here over the next few weeks to months, and you'll see more from us there on CDM on the military side. Bill, what do we got for the show today?
Well, tonight's going to be very interesting. We've got quite a bit going on in Georgia, some of which is building on a report that we did in our last show. And once again, I have to give massive shout outs to Georgians that are, one, they're paying attention, two, they remember and recognize patterns, similar things going on, and they're getting information to us so we can investigate and then build new reporting. So we're going to show a deeper, broader impact of what we began to show last week with Soros, Tides, and other organizations influencing what's going on in Georgia, worse than we even reported last time. And we're still not sure we're at the full depth, but we are getting more as we go through these days. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some things that happened with Trump this week. He went on a sort of an honorarium tour, I guess we'll call it. We'll show some of that happened. We're going to talk about some of the folks that we have reported on in the past that we believe have some very troubling ties, also potentially back to Soros and company. And yet they seem to be, in some cases, trying to hope that we've forgotten. And if you recall, we have promised we're not going to let Georgians forget who's who and who's been doing what. And this is a particularly important time as we work our way through primaries, through the public service election coming up on November 4th, and also into the 2026 elections next year. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. And a couple other things as well.
Well, I just want to ask people to a few things. Check out whatfinger.com, cdm.press. Put us in your daily scan, morning, noon, and night. We are a global news wire. We have reporters on the ground. That's why I'm here. We build relationships and we get information 24/7 that you're not going to get anywhere else. You know, we can't cover everything at the network, but we cover what you need to know. And you may not even need to know it. So that's our specialty, and we're going to continue to do that, and that's what we're working hard at. But you can also check out whatfinger.com. We work with them. They post a lot of our content, and we're appreciative of that. So we just want to give a shout out to them and check them out if you're looking for a good aggregator site. And we need funding to continue to grow, and one of the ways we do that is with our no ad subscriptions. You've heard us talk about this before, but if you go to my.cdm.press, that's my.cdm.press, you will be able to sign up for your no ad subscription. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. A lot of people just pay the 100, get it out of the way until next year. It's cheaper that way. And you get access to all of our reporting, whether it be, the Colorado legislative session, all the way to the Ukraine war, to what's happening in China, et cetera. So we're proud of that, and it works well for everybody involved, our readers and us, because we get funding every month that we can count on, and we really appreciate that. Let's get rolling, Bill.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to begin with a little bit of a review of what we began covering last time. Let me bring this up. So folks will recall that Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida, who is on the House Oversight Committee and other things, has released a spreadsheet showing funding coming from some of the nefarious players and to whom it is flowing. And the point that this began with was she was trying to show that The funding and the people involved in these protests around the country the organizations are actually being paid to do this. And we're not talking about a small amount of money. This particular spreadsheet, and it's only one, represents just under $300 million. And people are, I think, picking up on this. They're learning it and they understand it. And so I give them a lot of credit. And the important part here is to understand this is happening in Georgia at the same time. Now, yes, we're not seeing some of the protests in the same ways that we're seeing them in Portland and Chicago, perhaps. But does that mean that they won't be here? Well, we don't know yet. But it's important to know what we're looking at if and when it crops its ugly head. So here's the list. And then very notably, there's one organization that I highlighted last time, Indivisible, also known as Indivisible Civics. And it gets about $6 million in funding from various sources, including George Soros, the Tides organization, along with Arabella. And you'll recall that when President Trump was briefed on all of this about 2 weeks ago, those were three of the organizations that were specifically mentioned in that briefing: Arabella, Soros, and Tides. A little bit of background on Tides. Some people will say, well, Tides isn't really directly tied to Soros. Well, one, you'll find that if you search just a little bit, you'll recognize that Soros was one of the folks who seeded Tides. In other words, gave the initial money, it sounds like, to get it started. Yes, there was another founder, but often that is sort of a way of keeping their arm's length between organizations. You'll recall that some months ago, Elon Musk himself labeled Soros a genius when it came to NGO creation and funding. And he described the case where Soros would start an NGO, get some funding, use that funding to start 5 other, 6 other, 10 other NGOs, and then they'd begin trading money back and forth. What does that do? The flow of the money makes it almost impossible to track the original source and the original outcome. That having all been said, you'll find that Tides receives major funding from the Open Society Foundation that is directly linked to Soros, and from Soros himself in a number of cases. Okay, so last time we talked about finding that this person, Anita Tucker, who sits on the election board in Forsyth County, is associated with Indivisible. And you can see it here. You can see in some of the other things that we posted that she's been active in organizing certain things that apparently Indivisible is part of, both in Forsyth County and potentially elsewhere. Here she is speaking as an organizer at one of the events in Forsyth County. So we reported this last time, and to their credit, many folks around Georgia went to school on this. And they came back and they said, we've found some more and we need you to know about it. And so, bless them, they brought forward a number of reports so far that allow us to continue to build our awareness of what's going on here. So let me go back and let's see if I picked the right place. Here we go. So one of those is in the Appalachian area, typically would be a combination of Pickens and 14th District and so forth, 11th and 14th District. And here is an Indivisible event, if you will, back in 22. So this is a little bit dated, but that's even more telling because now we can see that these organizations have been active in Georgia for quite some time. Now, there were a couple different things they spotted. This happens to be a July 4th parade. And you can see here the sign that they're carrying down the street, Appalachian Indivisible. So apparently they're organized into regions. What I am told by the folks that brought this forward is there was such an uproar over some of these that they've actually now made many of these photos and other photos that I'm getting ready to show you disappear. Isn't that interesting? So again, if you're like us, if you're spouting truth and bringing truth to people, you don't want it to go away. You want it to stay out there so people can learn. When people hide things, that's an indication that they don't want you to know what they're doing. So this was, again, on July 4th back in 22. And here's an example of one of the people that was part of this. She had written on herself, "My body, my choice." Not sure what else I can comment on this.
I was going to say, where are you going to go with that one, Bill? I was waiting, man. I was all excited.
I could say something like, geez, it's a shame the supermodels don't write that on themselves, but I don't know. In any case, so here is, again, another post that has to do with Pickens County. And again, it's Appalachian Indivisible. And in this case, they had apparently a Christmas gathering in which at least one member, perhaps more, of the Pickens County Board of Elections was representative and attending. So here we have yet again another Board of Elections representative that's stuck together with Indivisible. Again, we don't know what exactly the relationship is. I did take the time to call the Pickens County Board of Elections yesterday. I did get a call back from the chairman, explained that I would like to speak to one of their members and one of the members of the board. And unfortunately, my phone didn't ring, so it must have been them. So that person, I am told, is pictured in some of these things. But again, this was up on a site known as nopickens.com. And apparently many of these photos have now been expunged. So who are we talking about? Well, here is the Pickens County Board of Elections and Registration. On the right-hand side is Becky Cantrell. Becky Cantrell is the person that our sources reported was one of those associated with that meeting we just pictured. So back to this get-together, if you will, and was apparently there to participate in some manner. Again, what the ties are, who's doing what, we can't tell because, again, people don't seem very forthcoming in wanting to talk about this. Why would that be? Well, so that was one of the reports that came forward. And again, we give them just a ton of credit for spotting this, bringing it forward, and allowing us to, to bring it to our listeners. So the other thing that came forward was I was pointed to this article from Gateway Pundit. Again, this is a bit dated. This goes back to after Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court in the Supreme Court finding, essentially said that the court had overstepped. They had made law instead of interpreting law. And many will recall, too, that the woman who was the foundation, if you will, of Roe v. Wade actually changed her story in subsequent years. There was a story that she had been raped that was part and parcel of the case. Later on, she recanted that and said, well, I wasn't really raped. And they found that the Reuters and others reported carefully that the case was not based on rape. Well, in fact, it was at the time. More importantly, here's what this article reports. 84, what they call lawless prosecutors from 29 states, 84 prosecutors from 29 states, and several Soros-funded DAs vow to disregard the law now found and confirmed by the Supreme Court, and not prosecute women who seek abortions or medics who provide them, even though Roe v. Wade had at this point been overturned. And they suggested, hey, take a look at the list and do your homework. Well, we did. And we find some very interesting things. So again, elected prosecutors across 29 states have signed a statement. We're going to show you the statement in just a minute, suggesting they will refuse to prosecute people who seek, assist, and provide those who have abortions following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn the 50-year law that guaranteed access to the procedure in every state. And then below in the same article, they list, here's a list of prosecutors signing on to the pledge. Lo and behold, the very first name listed is one Patsy Austin Gatson, who is district attorney for the Gwinnett Judicial Circuit. How fascinating. And there is Ms. Gatson's listing on LinkedIn. Interestingly enough, I didn't pull the whole thing, but it says 2020 at the top of her LinkedIn profile. Why would she have 2020, I wonder? Maybe that's when she was elected. I don't know. But in any case, she's listed. And then I got another tickle and they said, go deeper. Well, I did. And all of a sudden we find that there's not one, there's not two, but there are indeed 7 district attorneys in Georgia that signed on to that same commitment, if you will. So I'm going to bring this over so I can read it more carefully, so I get the names right. Bear with me for just a moment here, please. And there we go. So we have Patsy Austin Gatson. We have Sherry Boston, who is the district attorney, DeKalb County. Shalina Cook Jones, district attorney, Chatham County, Savannah. David Cook, district attorney for Macon Judicial Circuit. And then I'm going to go back over here and I will go to the next page for you. And 3 more. And we've got, and again, I'm going back and forth between 2 documents. Bear with me, please, here. So we have Deborah Gonzalez, who is the Western Judicial Circuit. That's Athens. We have Dahlia, and I believe her first name is actually Elizabeth Dahlia. Why she just used Dahlia, I'm not sure. District Attorney for Douglas County, Georgia. And then Jared Williams, District Attorney for Augusta Judicial Circuit. 7. Now go back to the way this article started. It said 84 across the country from 29 states. Just in Georgia, we have 7 of that 84. That to me is interesting. That's a substantial percentage of that entire list comes from Georgia. Here is what they signed on to. It is from an organization called Fair and Just Prosecution. And while I won't read you the entire thing, you're welcome to look it up, and you'll find it noted in online. And it does say that these people agree they are not going to prosecute or pursue anything with regard to people getting abortion. So they're going to support abortions in Georgia against what the Supreme Court found. So again, it's kind of like, where do we need to go from here? And my instinct was press deeper. So fair and just prosecution sounds very interesting, doesn't it? And they always make up these very nice names. We talked about that with regard to the NGO that was pushing tort reform, the organizations that were pushing for the pesticide bill. They always give themselves nice, fair, good-sounding names, right? Well, when you scan down and you find out where to go to learn more about fair and just prosecution, you can get to their website. There's their website. Then, if we go to the bottom of their website, look at what it says. Fair and Just Prosecution is a fiscally sponsored, funded, in other words, project of the Tide Center. 7 district attorneys in Georgia signed on to that letter. The letter came from Fair and Just Prosecution, which is a project of the Tide Center. So think about the connections here. Tide Center, tied to George Soros. Also tied to these other organizations we talked about, Indivisible and so forth, and many others we haven't found yet in Georgia. Doesn't mean they're not here. But we find out that these district attorneys acting supposedly in Georgia's state interest and in the interest of the people of Georgia have committed, they're not going to follow what the Supreme Court says. And they're going to follow instead what an organization, Fair and Just Prosecution, that is funded by the Tide Center is telling them to do. Do you find that concerning? I do.
What you've got here, Bill, is, there's stages to the Marxist revolution. And first they try to work within the system to do as much damage as they can. But once they realize the system is moving against them, they'll just stop working within the system and move to straight up illegality or, sedition or violence. And I think we're at that point.
It is very interesting. We're going to show some parallels too with other cases where courts, attorneys, other organizations appear simply to be turning their head away from the law. If someone in the community is smart enough to challenge the right thing, they find a way to either ignore it, to backburner it, or to say, no, that's not really what we're talking about here, even though it clearly is.
Or
And
we're just not going to do that.
that's right. We're simply not going to follow that. Here are some of the comments that I made earlier regarding George Soros. For those that say, well, I'm not sure that they're one and the same. Well, they're not exactly the same, but that's the whole point. This is a game of hide and seek based on money flow, based on money movement. And so this came from one of the AI engines to give me data so that I could get the names right and the dates right and so forth. But Politico in 2024 described the Tides Foundation as having been seeded by Soros, even though it was originally founded by a person by the name of Drummond Pike, with initial support from other donors like Jane Lehman and others. The Soros network has also funded related Tides entities. 22 million as an example to Tides advocacy. And they've supported various progressive initiatives. We've already seen that spreadsheet that Anna Paulina Luna brought forward. And so what we're seeing here is a flow of money coming into Georgia to cause certain organizations to be able to function. And we already know they have toeholds in some election boards. How many? We don't know yet. And I suspect we might find more. We see them with footholds in our court system, in our district attorney system, those who prosecute or fail to prosecute people that are doing wrong things, doing wrongful acts to other people. And so then you go back and you start correlating what we've heard in recent years, a stack up of cases failing to be pursued, people being released without cash bail and other things, or with very little cash bail in some cases, even though they have dramatic criminal backgrounds. And then we see what we reported last time, which are things like Laken Riley being killed by someone that was not in the country legally, had moved from state to state, had been already arrested on at least a couple occasions, shouldn't have probably been even free, and yet was free in Athens and able to kill her. So I wanted to make sure we knew about this, because my suspicion is, one, we will find more as more of those in Georgia bring forward their findings. And again, we want to say thank you to everybody that did that this week. And two, we need to out those as we find them. Eventually, I am convinced that the dynamic that you see going on in the country today will find its way to Georgia in an appropriate way. And many of these things will, in fact, get dealt with. How? Don't want to speculate, but they need to be dealt with, obviously. We can't have district attorneys being beholden to organizations that are not acting, not even incenting action in the best interest of Georgians. Deep breath.
Good point. Good analysis and good research, Bill.
Thank you. Again, the credit goes to those, they know who they are, that help push in the right direction. Thank you for that. Keep on, please. Keep bringing us new things for us to confirm and bring out. Perhaps this is a good time for a quick break.
Yes, let's talk. Christmas is coming, and we're going to start more talking about gifts for people you love. I'm on the road, and I brought my Nucleo Boost, the capsule size edition, and this fits right in a stocking, doesn't it? I mean, you can get this. This is 1 month's supply, one a day, and you get everything you need at the micro level for your nutrition and micronutrition. And it's a way to fend off disease. If your body's got everything it needs, your immune system is much stronger. So I'm going to run an ad from John B. Wells, and consider the subscription. It's cheaper of Nucleo Boost for that special someone. Here we go.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
So another, let me bring the right one back. Another gift idea I want to make you aware of. If you go to the Manhattan.press, that's the Manhattan.press. I have to do something here. Hold on one second. Got to remove that. There's the Manhattan.press. You go to the top right. This is our New York City paper. Up on the top menu, I'll just do it while we're watching. Click on the Manhattan bestsellers. And that is our competition with the New York Times bestsellers list. There's some editor's picks there, but this is all the best-selling books. There's no bias or anything. We have adult fiction. We have history. We have nonfiction. We have politics, children's books, young adults, etc. So, for instance, if you wanted to buy I Went to Prison So You Don't Have to by Peter Navarro, you can just check out and you can order the book from us. And if you wanted to order some other book, let's say Atlas Shrugged, you can go to this site, which is a CDM bookstore, and you can order Atlas Shrugged. When it'll come up and you can buy it from us, and you don't have to buy it from people who don't share your values. So it's a great gift idea and a way to support free media and get the gift for somebody that has everything, just some ideas. Back to you, Bill.
Before we move on, I want people to remember something about Atlas Shrugged. Who is the author of Atlas Shrugged? Do you recall?
Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand, that's right.
Yeah.
And where did she grow up? She
grew up in the Soviet Union and escaped and wrote about it. Yeah.
That's right. So remember that. We're going to talk about something in a few minutes, and we're going to come back to that as people learn more, I think, about Russia and their role in all of this. We're going to stick with Georgia. I want to segue to a video that Kevin Moncla put together and posted last couple of days. It's a really good piece that reminds people of the state election board case that he and Joe Rossi put forth. And we talked last time about how so much of the organization surrounding the state election board and into the Secretary of State's office, some of the courts, all seem to be working in concert to do everything possible to squash this case. Why is that? Well, there was a very interesting post this week that again suggests that if we get down to the bottom of a couple of these key cases, perhaps in Fulton County, perhaps in Maricopa, we would see enough to really understand what happened in 2020, and the dam would break. And I'm using that term myself. So I wanted to play this video. It's another primer and a reminder of what the case was all about and what's happened that unfortunately has got the thing stuck for the time being. But I'm pretty sure that eventually this is going to become unstuck. So let's watch this.
back to order the meeting of the State Election Board. And as promised, we are going to start with out of order with SCB 2023-025, Fulton County Tabulated Results 2020 General Election. Do we have a respondent here for that case? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for finding the serial numbers. The complaint 4 months ago, I asked for supporting documentation that showed the use of the scanners in the election, and the evidence provided included 7 opening zero tapes, 2 closing results tapes, 2 daily recap sheets. But these 10 scanners have no ballot images associated with the ballots that were scanned on those scanners. They have no memory cards with the ballot data, the ballot images. So the question is, or initiate an independent investigation to determine if 17,852 ballots are authentic. In addition to the motion, I request that the Secretary of State initiate an independent investigation of the authenticity of the ballots from 10 advanced voting scanners, or expunge the votes from
Hearing no second, that motion fails to move forward. Hearing no second, that motion fails to move forward. Hearing no second, that motion does not move forward. Hearing no second, that motion does not move forward. The chair would like to exercise its right to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
The chair would like to exercise its right to make a motion. The chair would make a motion to refer to the AG for immediate review of this case and recommend a monitor team to provide investigative oversight of Fulton County elections for 2024. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion that originally stipulated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No.
The votes is 2 ayes and 1 no. The motion passes. Thank you.
Maladministration.
Working when he entered the building to talk with Mrs. Brimmer, one of the election workers there. Mr. Garner replied they were boxing stuff up. The tally sheet was on the floor. Garner Sr. said his son told Allie Meekin that y'all are trying to F-word my dad out of this election.
After interviewing the polling staff, none claimed that the actions of the candidate nor his son hindered them from completing their election duties. That is virtually dispositive of the issue about whether we have a violation of the only statute that's alleged to potentially be violated, which is 21-2-569. Taking it further, there were multiple police reports that were filed. They were filed with Glenn County Sheriff's Office.
Any nays? Hearing no nays, the vote passes 4-0. Member Jeffries is on the phone now.
I found that video particularly helpful in understanding the timing and the cadence of the communication going on between the chairman, Furvier, and Jeffers, who was not calling in at the expected time, I guess I'll call it for the moment. And the result of that was that they could not get any of Jan Johnston's motions even considered because she couldn't get a second.
Amazing.
It is amazing. And that's why I wanted to show that video. And again, give a ton of credit to Kevin Moncla and his team and Joe Rossi for both of them bringing that case forward. You'll recall too that when things began to get hot in 2024, magically the chairman at that time, William Duffy, found reason without much explanation to resign his position. and they ended up eventually Kemp appointed the new chairman for a year. So I'm sure we're going to see more of this as we go forward, but it's important that people really understand this is not a game. This is a set of steps being carried out to make sure, apparently, that this case does not get fully investigated, not in the way that has been requested. Okay, let me move to the next thing.
Let's go.
So I was prompted by an email that I got this week, and I'm going to pull this up, and it's from the Tea Party Patriots and from one Jenny Beth Martin. And it talks about, join us, let us sign you up to be a poll watcher in Fulton County. And again, given what we now know from Tulsi Gabbard, from the president himself and others, the notion of poll watching is still, I guess you could call it, important. But it would be foolish, I think, to expect it to make substantive change in Georgia's elections. It's clear that there's much more going on here. We just saw some of it than simple just watching what's happening physically in a poll location, especially when we know things like electronic communication going on with Serbia and other things. Also, what particularly troubled me about this particular email was this seeming, interest in taking leadership in election integrity, especially since what we reported about Tea Party Patriots, Tea Party Patriot Foundation, and some of their officers earlier in the year. Recall this article that we published, I guess back first quarter or so of the year. And it talks about a connection between Tea Party Patriots Foundation and USAID, which was all in the news at that time about the funding coming out of USAID flowing through NGOs, just as we had described a few minutes ago, these strange connection of NGOs that are moving money back and forth, and some of it eventually landing with Tea Party Patriots Foundation. I'm going to jump forward a couple of screens here. Here's an example. The box on the right, and I didn't blow it up for tonight, but if you could just go to the article I just showed, just look up Tea Party Patriot Foundation in the Georgia Record. You'll find that article, and you can go through all the detail. We've got all the receipts right in the article. One of the very concerning connections was funding coming through something called Internews Network. Now, Internews Network, and I think you'll recall, I believe you published an article on this as well, was funding about 7,000 journalists that were reporting about Ukraine over the past several years, and apparently steering some of what was being reported. It was found very concerning, and they appeared to be trying to, like we've said over and over again, try to create a narrative supportive of Ukraine's position. But more troubling is, look at where the funding was going. It was coming from USAID through a collection of NGOs, reaching Internews Network, then going to another NGO, and then finally on the box on the right, reaching some of it reaching Tea Party Patriots Foundation. The other thing we reported in the article was some of the officers of that organization, and in two previous articles, we had tied other funding flows from USAID to one Debbie Dooley, I think it's Deborah Ellis Dooley, if I recall correctly. And I wanted to show a video that was taken during the state convention and give you a sense of how these people work. And I'm going to jump into sort of the middle of the video. Now, at this point, there was a lady who had finally approached and been able to get to the microphone. There was a lot of reports about not being able to get the mics because people were guarding the mics, if they will. Up to an hour before the convention started, people were standing at the mics, even though they had nothing to do at the time. But the purpose appeared to be to prevent other people from being able to reach the mics and speak. When this young lady finally reached the mic, she complained quite adamantly. But watch the woman in the back, the curly blondish hair, and watch what she does while this person is speaking.
And then, hours later, she begins to surrender to that. This is not fair. We have to get straight down. And this is what I'm saying. And the people in this seat don't understand what's going to happen. So we're the rules that allow that to happen.
She's got the floor. Stop it.
She's making crybaby noises. Crybaby noises. This
Really
person,
professional. Yeah.
yeah, and this person is an officer of that organization, Tea Party Patriots Foundation. So I guess my take on this is, I get this email asking me to consider participating, and actually the bottom of the email invites me to contribute, and yet we just got through talking about the very concerning funding flows already going to an associated organization called Tea Party Patriots Foundation, led by, again, Jenny Beth Martin and including this Debbie Dooley. Is that what people want to do? Have they forgotten what we reported just months ago? And if not, please consider that and think about it as you get this and similar emails from other organizations that I think are hoping we forgot. Unfortunately, we didn't. So wanted to make sure we brought that forward tonight.
Sure. Good stuff.
So you had spoken earlier about your travels and some of the things you're working on. If you have specific things you'd like to share, perhaps now would be a good time to talk about some of the things you're finding, some of the conversations where you can discuss them.
Yes.
So folks will understand what you're about over there.
So first of all, I went to a conference in Beirut I thought the conference was on sustaining Christianity in the Middle East, but it ended up to be a more globalist-oriented conference about how Christians need to support climate change and all this kind of stuff. And funny enough, Bill, I was walking out of the conference, and there was an office right in the university, USAID. So I found that fascinating.
No.
So
I did not set that up, honestly.
So I was going to take a picture, but I neglected to do that. But I have been meeting with when I was in Beirut, a lot of the senior leadership of some of the major Christian organizations, political parties, and other groups that are trying to maintain Christianity in the Middle East. And they've got some points they want to get out. One is they'd like, and I'm going to write this up, but this is the results of kind of an interview of a meeting I did with them. And they'd like some attention to the Christian plight in Lebanon by the U.S. administration. And they feel like for decades they've been ignored. They'd like to help in recapturing some of the power structure that the Christians lost in the Civil War in country. They want a return of Sunni Muslim refugees out of Lebanon back to Syria now that the war's over. They should go back. There's 2 million Sunni refugees in Syria. They're concerned about terror. They're concerned about demographic issues. They're concerned about just a lot of different things. Economics, they're taking jobs. And then last, they want to keep Christianity very vibrant in the region. They want to grow the roots, as they put it. They want where Christ walked to be known for a Christian area for generations to come. And I think that's extremely important as well. So I left late last night and flew to Montenegro and the Balkans. We're meeting some writers here and some people who have been active with us. They're going to be more active in our Balkan and Eastern European sites. And then we may be going to Serbia, not sure. But anyway, that's what we're doing here, Bill. And we're a news service. We're global. We have people all over the world, and we're not joking when we say that. And you're going to get information. You get a phone call from somebody at 2 a.m. Hey, this is happening. It could be days before it shows up in the news. And that's our calling card. That's what we're good at. And we're going to continue pouring gas on that fire that is a strong capability of ours. So that's really all I've got at this point.
I think we're seeing that sort of dynamic happen even here in the States. You'll recall when the first Liberty door shutting happened, we literally got a call early in the afternoon of the day that it went public. And I believe we were out in front of everybody and reporting that had occurred. Matter of fact, even the SEB hadn't acted yet. Sorry, not the SEB, the SEC. But the point was that folks trusted us to come and talk about, disclose what was happening, and trusted us to get it out and not, somehow mishandle it and spin it a different way. Notably, it didn't hit the AJC nearly as fast as it got to us.
Yes, exactly.
So,
exactly. Let me just throw up a couple of images here. Well, you go ahead. What else you got? I'll throw these up.
Well, I wanted to talk about a couple things going on in Washington and more nationally, and so we can do that after you're through going through what you would like to, if that's appropriate.
It's okay.
Or we
Why don't you go ahead and then come back to me?
Okay, sounds good. All right. In the last few days, there was a very interesting release from the House Oversight Committee. We know that following Trump entering office, it was found that an auto pen, meaning an automatic signing mechanism, had been used on a number of documents. After going through quite a number of hearings and much investigation, the House Oversight Committee published I think it's 20 or 30 pages long document that speaks to what their findings were. And that is, they believe many, perhaps not all, but many of the executive actions taken by Biden could be deemed and should be deemed null and void. And this would include pardons and other documents and executive orders implemented and issued by the White House during Biden's administration. So you'll recall in the last few days, just before he left office, there were a number of pardons that caused just angst and consternation across the country. One of the worst of which, in many people's mind, was pardoning Anthony Fauci. Why would Anthony Fauci need a pardon? And if he does need a pardon, why would a pardon be granted? What has he done? And we're still likely to find that out, but that was one of the bad ones. There were a number of family members and other things that received pardons. Now they've determined that based on their report, these should be deemed null and void and not valid. And now there should be an investigation. They've called on the DOJ to conduct a very significant review of the actions and also of the people involved in the White House that could have implemented a signing procedure absent the president giving a specific directive for that. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the people that were running the auto pen are probably in deep trouble. And it means that many of the things that apparently were attempted to put in place just before Biden left office may not be in place. And those stymies, those blocking mechanisms, if you will, may be not even valid. That would be fascinating. In typical fashion, a number of people jumped on it and found ways to poke fun at it. One of which is, one of which is that. And so given the sombrero memes over the last few days, so here is the auto pen with its own sombrero. Where this is going to go, we don't know yet. Folks can download the actual document. If you'll go to either Eric Doherty's post or I believe the House Oversight Committee itself has had several posts, and they link the document in those. You can download it. It's a PDF, and you can read it. It is a pretty lengthy read, but if you concentrate on the executive summary up front and then the conclusions, you'll be able to get to the meat of what this means or could mean as we go forward. But it is fascinating. So many of the things that we were concerned got put in place appear not necessarily to be in place. Okay. Did you find the things you were looking for, Todd?
A couple of them. So take that
just
down.
go ahead.
I had the luxury of being asked to speak at the Talbot County, Maryland Lincoln Day dinner recently. And that is just a slide from that. CDM was highly valued, mentioned, and loved, and they love the Easton Gazette, our Maryland paper, and they want more. So they want more coverage, and they want to support the paper more. So I was very thankful for that. And then this is the conference I went to in Lebanon at the university on Christianity. And anyway, we'll be back in Beirut. I have a feeling in a few weeks there's some lingering business we've got to take care of. But that's all I had. Okay.
So back to the National Front. Trump has traveled over the last few days and has received just kind of an unbelievable welcome, if you will, where he has gone. One of those was from South Korea, and it's kind of ironic given these no kings protests. Of course, we don't have a king. We have a president acting like a president for a change and doing the things that he's empowered to do based on the Constitution. But in this case, in South Korea, they awarded him a golden crown of sorts in thanks for his work and stewardship on their behalf. And the Prime Minister of Japan gave him the former Prime Minister's personal golf putter, which is just an amazing thing. It's just a personal gift that you would not have seen. I don't think I've seen something like this ever, but it is remarkable. And I didn't have a slide of that for tonight, but it is very interesting. You'll find it on X and you can see that. And then perhaps most notably, Trump was in Malaysia and held a summit, actually called the United States Summit. And they welcomed him with the theme, believe it or not, let me take this down, the theme from Rocky. Let's listen. I don't know. It just feels like history. It really does. The Rocky theme in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And they were actually playing it. I cut it short. People can find it online if they want to hear the rest of it. They did a wonderful job. It was probably the best rendition I've heard from a live orchestra in a long time. But I mean, there's impacts being made in places that I don't think would have ever foreseen for one reason or another. And it is remarkable. One last thing, and I'm bringing this up because we have spoken again and again and again about Mr. Dimitrov, the special envoy from Russia, special envoy on behalf of Putin. And he presented today, or over the last couple of days, a review of the status of Russia's economy. And again, it's kind of like, depending on who you listen to, you'll hear varying reports, but I have a funny feeling we can trust what he has to say. I wanted to play this because it gives a sense of how sturdy Russia economically is compared to many of the countries that seem to be not acting in our best interest. Let's listen to this.
Economy, and just give you some numbers, I think many people will be shocked. So this is numbers of growth, unemployment, debt, and budget deficit of Russia, EU, UK. Sorry, I'll run through some of them. So Russia last year grows 4%, Europe, UK around 1%, a little bit less than 1%. 4% of Russia growth. Unemployment in Russia 2.2%, in EU 6%, in UK 5%. Debt to GDP in Russia around 15%, in Europe around 100%. In UK, 97%. Budget deficit in Russia, 2.6%. In the EU, 3.3%. In UK, 5.1%. And inflation, some officials said, oh, Russian inflation is around 20%. Well, that's factually wrong. It's actually 8%. and the forecast for the end of the year is around 6.57%. So on all of the macro indicators of growth, etc., Russia beats EU and UK. And I think one of the reasons is the cost to Western nations of sanctions. And we mentioned before around 300 billion that US businesses lost from moving outside of Russia. Our estimate of cost to Europe is 1.3 trillion lost on basically moving away from Russian gas. I mean, there are lots of immigration programs they could have done with this 1.3 trillion.
One of the things that I heard that I was astounded at was the debt to GDP ratio. It's a fraction of what we have in the U.S.
Yeah, I've been writing about that for a long time because they essentially, until recently, they didn't really have any sovereign debt. I mean, they have big rainy day funds from their oil exports, and it was I forget the gentleman's name, but there was a close advisor of Putin who after the 90s, when they had the devaluation, they brought him in, Kudrin, I think is his name, and he just gave some really good advice to Putin, and they did some really strong economic stuff, and they've always been in a better position financially. They're not as robust of an economy, but their financial decision making is very good.
It is fascinating, and it's not what most people would have thought. People don't. My own opinion now, people don't really understand what Russia has done and hasn't done. And what I look back on now is so much of the narratives that we've heard have poked the arrow at Russia being the bad guy, if you will, most of the time. And yet, now that we know more than we did 4 or 5 years ago, we can begin to say, wait a minute, there's lots of bad actors in the world. And in some cases, perhaps our own agencies were part of that definition, doing various things we didn't know that they were doing. But as we learn more, and as Mr. Dmitriev has shown by whatever role he had in helping get the JFK documents to the U.S. and let us see what was in play back at the time of JFK's assassination and such, already there's talk that those things might be rejuvenated, and we might once again move toward something that could be very positive. A little early to speculate, but it is fascinating to watch. And again, it has that feeling of, gosh, this is not the way we would have seen things 4 or 5 years ago. So with that, that's about what I have today, Todd.
Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow on the Skiff at 10 to noon, Monday through Friday Eastern. We'll be live from Montenegro, and we'll have some interesting guests. And by the way, if somebody was watching this morning, we had a scare. We thought Jeff Bongiorno was actually poisoned coming on the show, but he's okay. Just get that out. He had some kind of attack, and we were kind of worried about him, but because he's in the depths of this fight in Palm Beach County on the election fraud, and it was really upsetting a lot of people. So I was worried that something bad had happened to him, but he's okay. So we'll get that out. That's all I got, Bill. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. We'll see you next on Sunday at 2 p.m. And we'll have some very interesting follow-up on some of the stuff that we, again, have covered in previous shows. I bet there's going to be more going on here in Georgia. So We'll see you then.